Well, I'm so happy because today we have a really special guest with us, Lexie Kite. And I have followed her work for so long, her and her identical twin sister, Lindsay, their work with Beauty Redefined. They are the authors, the co-authors of their new book, More Than a Body. I highly recommend it. This is very eye-opening. And especially for any woman and any woman who has daughters, and really any woman who has sons who may marry a woman at some point. So, all great. So, Lexie, you and your sister, as I said, you're the co-directors of Beauty Redefined, and you've just done so much. You both received your PhDs from the University of Utah, where my dad actually went there. Awesome. And you have been cited in all the big names of all the big, New York Times and Boston Globe, et cetera, et cetera. And you have studied to become leading experts, cited all over the world on body image and body image resilience. So I welcome. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today.
Oh, I'm so happy to talk to you. This will be a great conversation.
Yes, because what we're going to do is we're going to help parents help their children, especially their daughters, to grow up with a better feeling about their bodies. We only have one body.
Totally.
And a lot of it is genetics, though, we get what we get.
Yep.
And so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how to reject, the negative body image messages, especially in pornography. We're going to talk about media literacy a little bit. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. So I'm so excited to get into this. Of course, here at Defend Young Minds, we help parents to teach their kids to recognize and reject pornography. And I consider pornography to be like the most toxic body image poison out there. And girls often go to porn to learn how to be sexually attractive, how to get a boyfriend, all those things. And it's like the worst,
the most sexist, disgusting, unattainable ideals of all. Yeah.
Yes. So, and this is so easily, accessible to our kids. So we have to kind of inoculate them against it. We have to help them to understand that, what it is, what the dangers are, and why they need to kind of like turn away, keep it out of their brain and such. So, anyway, let's, when I was a kid growing up, I remember getting to a certain age, but where I was more conscious about my body, but young children are, really just free. It's wonderful to see how they'll run around naked. They love it. They don't care. They're not aware. But then at some point, something happens and they start to become aware of their body and maybe even critical of it. So how does this happen in a child's normal development? And, how does society and the marketplace, with all these products, how does that come in to feed children these messages where they start to be critical of their bodies?
We all witness it and we all experienced it. When you think back to those times early in your childhood, especially when you're swimming, you're at the pool or you're at the beach, I think we can all hopefully remember a time when we weren't so self-conscious, when we weren't ashamed. We can look to our own babies and our grandbabies to see that too. And there is a stark contrast that happens in every kid's life, especially for girls. This is what we see for girls. When we grow up and grow older in a culture that objectifies our bodies, literally treats us as objects, feeding us messages from our culture from our parents who love us, who don't know another way of talking about bodies, from the shows we're watching, movies, and on and on and on. We get this message that we are objects in need of fixing, that as we evaluate and monitor and fix our whole bodies, from the roots in our hair to the size of our pores, the color of our skin, the thickness of our eyebrows, the length of our eyelashes, all the way down. As we fix those parts, as we make our bodies our constant projects, that's how we'll earn love and happiness and health and success. That's the message we get. We get it in a million ways every day, even from people who love us. Especially people in the older generations, they did not know another way to value women besides making sure they knew how beautiful they were, that your beauty is what makes you. Femininity is beauty, and you are so beautiful. And yet we don't realize, and a thing Lindsay and I talk a lot about, is that reinforcement of beauty, of looks, of bodies, that is hurting kids and adults in the most real world ways. So when kids are young, especially little girls, we use a metaphor in our book where we talk about this idea of self-objectification. Self-objectification is a word and a phrase everybody needs to know. It's the idea that instead of living inside your body as your home, you self-objectify, you split from yourself to watch yourself live instead of live. You picture your worst fears of what other people might be thinking when they look at you, when you're sitting in a meeting or walking down the street. You start thinking about your body as your project instead of living inside it like you did when you were little. That starts very young for girls. Research used to tell us it started around puberty. Now we see it happening much earlier. The warning signs are girls talking about, I'm not pretty, I'm ugly, I'm fat. When they get really fixated on what they want to wear, these things come up where they are prioritizing how they look instead of how they live, how they experience their own bodies. And that is a warning sign to watch out for when girls are starting to really take on these messages from our culture that tell them their bodies are the most important thing about them.
Yeah. Now, when we see these signs, what do we do? Because I also want you to talk about how parents can model, especially mothers can model for their daughters, because, it's very common to, your kids overhear you, they pick up on everything. And, if you're saying, oh, I just got to lose this, and I just wish I didn't like this and whatever, I remember as a kid, like looking at myself and going, oh, my arms are too thick. And I wasn't overweight, but I realized they were not thin model arms. But I'm actually kind of strong, I got to a point where I was like proud of that. But I remember thinking, oh, and I'm not this and not that enough. And I started comparing myself. And so what do parents do when they start seeing, these signs of, their kids kind of
splitting from themselves,
which, I have to say, we talk about objectification. I wish there were a stronger word, because, and the way I like to talk about it is like, you can kick an object and there's not going to be any pain felt. You can kick a ball, you can throw a doll even, but when you objectify another person, as is done so much in pornography, it's easy to hurt them. If they're objects, it's easy to hurt an object, to kick it, to treat it badly. And, we don't want that for ourselves or our children.
Totally. Yeah. Jean Kilbourne, one of the media literacy pioneers from early on, who endorsed our book and told us she's a big fan of our work, which was just so flattering. We cite her as saying that the first step to inflicting violence against somebody is to objectify them. Because when you objectify someone, you dehumanize them. You make it very easy to hurt them, to use them. And we do that to ourselves too. We
dehumanize ourselves by objectifying ourselves.
We break ourselves into parts. We hate our parts. We drag around our bodies like they are burdens that are disgusting, because we have been taught that, even from our moms,
Yeah.
even from the people who love us the most.
Yeah.
What I would recommend to parents, to grandparents, to people who work with kids in any shape or form is, even before you see the self-objectification happening, I want you to teach your children a paradigm shift that will change their lives, and it will change yours too, because we made up this mantra and I still use it every day. My body is an instrument, not an ornament.
Mm.
This is a paradigm shift that even little kids, 3-year-olds, can understand when you explain it to them. I taught my daughter this mantra when she was 3 and she memorized it. She said it back to a teenage girl the other day who saw, my daughter Logan was with her. She saw a picture of herself she didn't like and said something out loud about it. And Logan said, "Your body is an instrument, not an ornament." And that teenage girl told me, and I just, oh, my heart just swelled. When we teach kids from a young age to prioritize how they feel inside their bodies, what they can do with their bodies, even if they don't have a full range of mobility or ability. When we can teach them that this body, it's the only home they're ever going to have, that their body will grow and change, that it will not conform to the very narrow ideals that are presented to them in media, because we only see pretty much one way to be a female in media, and we can talk all about that, even in kids media, even in animated media.
Yeah.
And so when we can teach kids from a very early age to prioritize, even when they're getting dressed, when your daughter is getting dressed, if she gets really fixated on wanting to wear the frilliest things because she consumes a lot of princess content, a lot of like girly stuff, you can help her get back into her body by asking her questions about how she feels. Is it soft? Can you stretch in it? Can you lunge in it? Do some jumping jacks for me. Do some stretches. Maybe we could put some soft pants under it so you don't scratch your legs when you're climbing. You know, these are things we can do to help them get back inside. We can also do lots of things in the way we talk about our own bodies. And that means that from this point forward, you pledge to never again talk disparagingly about your own body or anyone else's. I'm talking, we don't say a word, even for good or bad, about how people look. Because our bodies are so dynamic and so changing that when we can help little kids understand that bodies come in a vast array of sizes, shapes, colors, and they're all good, and that their body will come in a vast array of sizes and shapes throughout their lives, then they can break the value system that tells them that your body is only good if it looks a certain way, and that your mom's body is only good when it looks a certain way, and on and on and on. We set them up with this instrumental idea about their bodies so that they can prioritize movement that serves them, that doesn't hurt them or punish them for what they ate, you know, these things that they grow up eating. We, along that same lines, you start talking to them about how food is fuel for their bodies, that a variety of colors and textures is good for them, for that fuel. All of those things can help them more intuitively understand their body as their home, the only one they're ever going to have.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. And modeling it, it is so hard, you know, on social media, that somebody shows a cute picture of a baby or a little girl and a cute thing, and everyone's like, oh, she's so adorable. And you want to just say the same thing, but I've caught myself and then tried to say something else.
Yes.
You know, even she's precious. I don't know. I'm not sure what to say, but it is hard because there's this social kind of expectation, but I try to come up with something different to say, other than just focusing on that she's adorable. So, you know, you talk about in the book that our bodies become, as you said, you know, these problems to either hide or fix, right? And of course, there's a whole industry out there that's willing to give you the products, including surgery, to fix your body, and or you want to hide it in some way. So what happens to girls that really totally take on all the messages, you know, internalize all the messages that they're hearing and seeing? What are some of the bad things? What are some of the harmful things that are happening to these girls? And what are the consequences, the real life consequences?
There are really
physical consequences.
They are physical. They're mental and physical. When girls begin to self-objectify, when they split from themselves to watch themselves from the outside and get more self-conscious about how they look than prioritizing who they are, how they feel, what they can do, it is very visible. You know, when we're doing these big presentations, like for universities or corporations, and we're speaking about self-objectification, you can see the light bulbs go off in the minds of all the women in the room who say, there's a name for it. This is what I do. Even when I'm alone, I'm sucking in my stomach. I'm putting my legs the way that I think they look the best to me. We need a name for this. It is self-objectification. A lot of times the men in the room, they can't relate. They don't have this portion of their mind and their energy dedicated to how they appear in the same way we have been taught to do this. And we have been taught.
Wouldn't that be nice if we could get rid of that?
I mean, consider your eyelashes alone. From the time girls are very young, about puberty or before, we start thinking about our eyelashes every day. And we police them. If they're not dark enough, I can't leave the house. I don't look like myself. If you take your extensions off, you look naked. You know, the eyelashes alone are just one way to really see how sexist these ideals are that cost us so much time and energy. So if you think about self-objectification in terms of the toll it takes on your life, it is very real. It's not only a toll that means that you have to spend more time hiding and fixing your flaws your whole life and thinking about it, but research shows that when girls are in a state of self-objectification, they perform worse on math tests, reading comprehension tests. They can't perform as well during physical activity. They can't get into a flow state when they're running on a treadmill because they're self-conscious of how they look to the person behind them, which happens to all of us. They can't get into a flow state to create, to sing, to create art, because a portion of their mind is always distracted by how they appear. There are real world consequences for being defined by your body at the expense of your humanity.
Yeah.
And so the most important thing we can do is name it as it happens to us, as it happens to our daughters. When you see it take place, you say, oh, I noticed that you're splitting. You're thinking about how you look instead of living inside this amazing body. And you can call it out even when it happens to yourself. If they catch you looking at yourself in the mirror and feeling a little bit like they can see that you are self-conscious of how you appear, or you slip up and say, oh, I shouldn't eat that, or whatever the thing might be honest with them. Depending on their age and maturity, you can say, ooh, I just caught myself slipping away from my body again to look at it instead of live inside it. I'm going to get back in. And then a way you can do that, a really simple practice you can do, even as you're sitting here listening to this right now, is to take 3 big, deep breaths, filling your lungs with oxygen. Because so many of us live in this anxious state, especially when you're self-objectifying. That's an abstract state in your mind. It's a thought. It's not reality. You're thinking through these fears. Get back down into your body.
Into your body.
Breaths, and then soften your stomach muscles. Let that belly go. Let it breathe. Women from a young age have been taught to suck it in. We've been taught to always stay sucked in, even when we're alone. We police ourselves according to these ideals, even when we're sitting at home in our own offices and beds. It's what we do. So when you can relax those stomach muscles and then get back inside your body in those anxious times by, if you're with your daughter, do some lunges on the floor if you can, do something with your legs to feel those muscles work, go up and down the stairs with her one time, do something to feel your muscles in action, and then say out loud, what do you see? What do you smell? What do you feel right now? Can you feel your heart beating? Can you feel your lungs filling up with air? Get back into that home and prioritize that with her so that as she gets older, the consequences of self-objectification extend far beyond, not performing well in school. They extend to unhealthy relationships where she might get involved with a guy just because he likes the way she looks. And she's grateful that somebody is attracted to her because she's been told her whole life she's disgusting from all these other media messages. So too many of us stay in unhealthy relationships. We don't say no, when we want to say no.
Yeah.
Because we feel like, oh, I owe it to them. We sit out on the sidelines of opportunities, like girls stop raising their hands in class because they don't want to be seen, and on and on and on. So if you could start young by helping her prioritize how she feels in her body, she'll be less likely to binge eat or starve herself, to exercise, to over exercise and hurt herself. She'll be less likely to prioritize relationships that hurt her, that objectify her, because she knows that her body, it's hers first. It's her home, and it's hers to reclaim.
That's beautiful. That's great. And I know that, you mentioned in the book, not only like some of the things you've already mentioned, the harms, obviously getting into a relationship that is, harmful is bad. But like cutting and doing some of
Oh,
these
yes.
things where they feel such shame
Yes.
that they cut or they self-harm in those ways.
Yes.
And, you know,
Suicidal ideation,
yeah,
self-harm are on the rise like you would not believe, or maybe you can believe, among young women. We have heard from thousands of them after our live presentations who come up to us to tell us that they hurt themselves. They show us the scars
yeah,
usually on their wrists.
yeah,
And we talk them through the fact that that is because of great pain and shame they've experienced. Many have experienced sexual assault. That's
yeah,
just a given. A lot of girls who experience such severe body shame and pain do so because their body was used as a weapon against them. A lot of that, as you know, is learned by boys and girls who view violent porn, which is the
yeah,
vast majority of porn out there.
right.
And so these girls, after their body has been used as a weapon against them, they hate that body, and they
Yeah,
want to exert some control. They want to feel some visceral pain, so they hurt themselves. And one of the ways that we can help these girls reclaim this home as their own, reclaim their joy, their safety, their health as their own, is by understanding that their bodies are instruments for their use and no one else's, that their bodies are not ornaments. They are not to be cast aside and used. And that as they can start identifying objectification in their world, in the ways they're treated, in the media they consume, in the ways people talk about women, they can get mad. And mad
yeah,
is a good first step. We want them to be mad in order to rebel against this stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think anger is always a bad thing. If it
Absolutely.
leads you to do a positive action, that's
Totally.
when I think it's great.